The worst thing you can do is not use the holiday season as an opportunity to build your list and to build your relationships and to set yourself up for 2023. That's the worst thing. It's not bad if you don't have like a 10 out of 10 gold product in terms of an opt-in funnel to run. That's okay. You just don't want to do nothing.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 237, and we're going to be talking all about Q4, the fourth quarter, the tail end, the final stretch of 2022. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Ed Isola. Ed, what's up, dude? This is an exciting time of year.
Dude, it is. I mean, every time of the year is exciting, but this is particularly exciting because, like you said, we're heading into the fourth quarter. There are a lot of opportunities to generate new subscribers, generate more sales, and also it's, as always, a great time to tee yourself up for, as crazy as it sounds, 2023. So it's really a kind of a crucial building block, I think, because you want to end the year strong and go into next year with some momentum.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's the end of the year, like quarter four tends to be the time where a lot of people try to fit in releases before the holidays. It's also a massive revenue period for businesses of all kinds, obviously with Black Friday and holiday sales, but also just in general, trying to like really hit their growth targets. And I think you said it well. There's a lot of opportunity to also just kind of tee yourself up for the new year. So we're going to talk about that on this episode. And I really think there's kind of like three steps or three big tips that I would recommend for artists as they look to really crush out this time of year and not miss out on some of the opportunities that go on in it, which is something that a lot of artists do. You know, they kind of sleep on sales. They kind of sleep on the opportunity to grow. If they're not releasing something in this time period, a lot of times things start to just get sleepy. The music industry definitely goes to sleep after after Thanksgiving a bit, unless you're releasing holiday music. So getting ahead of that now is really, really important.
Dude, absolutely. And I think, like you said, getting ahead of it is important. And so I think where we want to start today is the fact that you have to have a plan going into the end of this year. I think that you'll find that if you head into September, October, November, December, and you're just like, let me wing it, I think you'll find it's not going to go particularly well. A lot of this is sales related type stuff too. And so one thing to be aware of is that a lot of products will no longer be available. Christmas sweaters, that kind of stuff. You got to get ahead of the ball on that. You've got to get ahead of the ball on however you're going to kind of get people on your email list and build those things out. So I think the first step here is plan out your calendars and your releases heading into this last quarter, so that you have these very clear targets that you can hit and you're working towards them, hitting them, working towards the next one, hitting it, as opposed to trying to scramble and make things happen, which will inevitably make them less cool than they probably could be.
Yeah, well said. I think like now is a good time. Actually, like starting now, you might even be a little behind the eight ball. So hopefully this episode is a little bit of a wake up call about like setting your calendar up. So even if that means just planning, 2 sales promotions on the calendar, one of them being Black Friday and maybe something leading up to it. So not only do you want to be focused on your calendar dates as far as when things are going to launch and when promotions might close, but also things just like when you're going to need to have assets finished and delivered, when you're going to actually start on the build of something. So say you have a single coming out the third week of October, when you start actually doing the work to get the marketing ready for that is really, really important. Having that all in place, I think, can really put you in a spot to be realistic, for one, about what you can actually get accomplished and being able to meet the deadlines for those launches, and also help you deliver upon the work in a way that, like you said, Ed, is satisfactory and not underwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this one can sound a little bit daunting, but really all it is taking, I would say like a few hours to write this down. Like Jack said, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. In fact, I think if we want to kind of make it actionable right now, it's like, here's the steps that I would do if I was you. Look at a calendar. Could be a desk calendar. could be a piece of paper where you just are going to write dates down. Doesn't really matter. But look at a calendar and write down as a starting point, what are my release dates? So that could be 1. You could be putting out a Black Friday sale. Maybe that's it. Could be 3. But put down your start dates and say, I got a single coming out October 21st. I got a Black Sales Friday going live on November 23rd. And I got a Christmas promo going live on December 15th. Made up dates, but essentially just start off by putting your dates down on this calendar. And then what I would do is jump back a month from that date and say, start planning that promo. And if you want to go even further, that to me would be the bare minimum of what this planning looks like. So you have like Jack said, you have the start date, probably put the end date on there for the promo, and then here's what I'm going to start thinking about this thing date. So 3 things per, release or sales promo, whatever you're doing. That's how I would start crafting this in a very, very easy fashion. If you want to go one step deeper, you can start plotting down to the week. Like, here are how the emails are going, and here's how I'm going to draft the emails, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, what do you think of that, Jack, as like a starting point for planning the calendar?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, really, I think taking an MVP kind of approach to this at this stage in the game, especially if you're starting from, ground zero with a calendar for this part of the year, that's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the point of this whole thing is like, you want to move quickly with this. This is not intended to be some big in-depth exercise. This is step 1 of 3, right? Like step 1 of the planning should be quick. And hopefully that kind of helps outline what your calendar should look like. Again, it's like start date, end date, the begin working on date, which you could just pull a month out. So that's pretty easy to put together. And then from there, you just start planning, okay, well, my month out start date is I'm going to start thinking about this on September 15th. And when you do, what I would do on that front is on the start thinking about date, first thing, write out everything that you're going to need to do for whatever that upcoming goal is. It could be sales emails. It could be album artwork. It could be promotional videos. Whatever it is, just write down everything you need. And then over the coming weeks, just start working that off that checklist and start checking things off, making them. That'll give you a way to not feel overwhelmed, but still make cool stuff happen in this 4th quarter if you are just starting out. And even if you're very established, like you're still going to need that checklist. You might have a easier time by knowing like, hey, with my sales promo, I do A, B, and C. So some of the prep and outlining will come a little bit quicker to you, but you'll still have to do the same stuff. So I think that's a great place to kind of start in terms of wrapping up number 1 on this list, which is planning your calendar, planning your releases, and kind of itemizing out your to-do list so that you have a very clear kill list, I guess is what it's called, or checklist rather, of action items as you approach each deadline.
I think it's especially helpful to note here that like doing this now will also set you up for a really good process going into the next year. So if you've never done something like this before, you don't have to feel overwhelmed by it. You don't have to get it perfect going into Q4. It's just going to get you in a place where you can, start to make this a normal part of what you do as an artist as you try to market your music.
Yeah, that's a really, really fair point of like, this is kind of teaching you, here's how I go about this, because like Jack just said, what this is going to do, it's going to roll right into 2023 where your year's starting and you're going to be like, well, what things do I have coming up this year? Let me repeat this process for everything. So I wasn't thinking about that, but that's actually kind of a really great way to put it of like, this is valuable not only because it's going to make your 4th quarter great, it's also going to set you up for success in terms of planning for 2023.
For sure, yeah. And we did an episode a while back on like offer creation and running sales promotions and stuff like that. So I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes because that will probably give you guys some kind of creative juice, so to speak, pun heavily intended here, on some ideas and strategies that you can pull from if you start to feel overwhelmed in planning out a calendar. Now, the next thing kind of on our kill list for Q4 is start looking for ways to convert your audiences into paths where you can communicate with them. So this is really a good time, in my opinion, to start moving from fans that are kind of just hanging out in your ecosystem to fans that you can have one-to-one conversations with. So start working to build up your email list and start building up your text list as well. And there are a lot of reasons for this. For sure, one of them being like if you're going to be running sales promotions on a consistent basis through the calendar that you've built out, having a way to communicate with those fans directly is going to be massively helpful. But this is just also a time, and we're going to talk more about this in a second, but this is a time where advertising gets more challenging, and we'll talk about why, like I said, in just a moment. So having a channel where you don't have to advertise or you don't have to rely on, algorithmic organic reach on social media to talk to your fans and to put stuff in front of them is really, really critical. So I think that that's something to focus in on as well in this period of time, kind of working hand in hand with what you do on your promotional calendar.
Dude, absolutely. And I feel like, maybe I'll say this for in a second, but these three things link together very, very nicely, where if number one is plan, number two, in my mind, like you said, it's convert your audiences in a way that you can communicate with them. I really view this as like build. And so this is like the building stage of like, all right, I know what I'm trying to do. That's number one. Number two is let me put those things into practice. Like you said, whether that's a sales promo, whether that's probably more likely using a sales promo to build your list. It's like, get people onto your text list, get people onto your email list. You can do that via running ads. Like Jack said, probably by the time you hit, October or mid-October, things are going to start ramping up for Thanksgiving spend and holiday spend, and you'll start seeing things on the ad front become a little bit more expensive. So as you can do that in September and October, that being building your lists, the better. So if you're listening to this, I'd really, really put the focus up front on how do I build my list? And that could be via ads with a tripwire or a lead magnet. That could be via posting on your socials, like swipe up to get cool stuff. It could be going live and asking people to opt in. But kind of like at all costs, building your list as much as you can right now is the key here on this step, because exactly what Jack said, you want to be able to get in front of people for the cheapest cost. And everybody and their mother is advertising when it comes to the fourth quarter, especially late October, November, December. And so what that means is ad costs are going to go up. But if you want to run a Black Friday sale and a Christmas sale, and you can get in front of somebody with an email for free, you can obviously see why that's going to be advantageous to you versus, oh man, I got to spend $20 to sell a t-shirt on ads and like it's not going well. So really dial in for number two, in my opinion. It's like convert your audiences so you can communicate with them. Really dial in the next 6-7 weeks, quickly building and launching a way to get people onto your email list. Again, this will set you up for the top of next year too, but definitely super important.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of seeing this episode unfold as hopefully a little bit of a checklist, and two, a resource list. I'm going to make sure that we link to the show notes in a previous episode that we did on how we get fans to subscribe at the agency, at IndieX, with artists that we work with at our music marketing agency, to give you guys, exactly like Ed was saying, what are some ideas? What kind of offers, free offers can you make to get fans onto your list in a frictionless, cool, on-brand way? And hopefully you'll get some more kind of fuel and ideas to work with to do that. And you could pretty much start implementing them right away. So really, I'm seeing the whole purpose of this episode, hopefully spiraling into really quick, actionable items that you guys can take and start taking that don't require a whole lot of ramping up to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as we head into number three on this quick checklist here, it's like I said, number one is plan, number two is build, and then number three is just like go for it and advertise. As like cheesy as that sounds, to go for it, but it's just like the action phase of like, all right, you did it, you built your lists, now advertise and sell stuff and communicate with fans. But what I wanted to kind of touch on was where you were saying, which is like, listen to these episodes that we're going to link to, listen back to them and get ideas. But by no means does this stuff have to be the coolest opt-in experience of all time. Like, you're really just looking for a plan and something you can put together. And if you have any kind of system already in place, or systems in terms of like your tech stack, you could probably do this in an afternoon or two if you have a little bit of experience with it, where in my mind, I would probably just go with like an early access type funnel, and you can hear more about that on the episode that we're linking to. But just like go for a very basic, like, hey, get early access to holiday offers and new music. Join the list. One welcome email. It's done. It's built. You don't have to have this long, like 5 to 7 list type thing if you're going to go organic. And even if you wanted to go and run ads to it, take your 3 favorite videos, call it your greatest hits, and deliver it via email series. Like, these things shouldn't take very long if you have any experience in terms of building stuff. And if you haven't, maybe it'll take you a few extra days because you got to get familiar with MailChimp and stuff, but the ideas are very streamlined. So I just wanted to highlight that before we jump into number 3, which, as I kind of just revealed, is prepare to go forward and advertise.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're totally right, dude. Like, this is very much if you're familiar with the book Ready, Fire, Aim, this is very much a ready, fire, aim kind of time. I'll link to that book in the show notes for any of y'all that might need to get some inspiration on taking fast, decisive action, and not getting thrown off by overthinking here. We'll also link to Indie Pro in the show notes. If any of the strategies or the topics that we're talking about on this episode are all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, these guys are telling me a lot of stuff that I need to do that I have no context of how to do, we'll link to Indie Pro. You can join the community and get into some of the trainings where we teach exactly the strategy that we're talking about. We talk about building a promotional calendar. We talk about how to build great permission bribes and get people onto your list. We talk about advertising plenty. So join Indie Pro if you're not already and you need a refresher or a starting point on how to use some of this stuff and do some of this stuff as we wind down 2022 here. Now, talking about advertising hard, Q4 is like hard mode on advertising. Things get really expensive because, people are just advertisers. Other companies are flooding the ad space with their budget. They're trying their hardest to advertise as much as they can to get as much visibility as they can, to get as much sales as they can going on, especially as we head into the holidays. So when I say prepare to advertise hard, one, you're going to be advertising on hard mode for sure. Things are going to be more expensive and you should prepare and expect that. And, that's part of the reason why building up your list is important, because it allows you to rely a little bit less on advertising. But that doesn't mean you should stop it altogether. And I think that that's something that, becomes a concern, is like, should I just not bother to advertise? No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think you should. Granted, I think we're going to see a more expensive Q4 this year than we've seen even over the past few years. Things have definitely gotten more expensive as we've kind of moved from hyper aware online times of 2020 and early 2021. Things have gotten more expensive this year, and I think they're only going to continue to. So my advice to you when it comes to advertising is plan out your budgets now and plan to stick to them. I mean, that's kind of like big point number 1 is plan to set aside a dedicated budget that you're going to use for advertising, and plan to stick to using it. Build out your campaigns, build them out ahead of time, especially because the review time for Facebook ads, for example, tends to take a lot longer in Q4, especially going into Black Friday. Your ads might be in review for 2 days or longer. In a lot of cases, we see that all the time. So just a helpful tip there, like plan your campaigns well in advance, build your campaigns well in advance, set your budgets ahead of time, and know, this is what I'm planning to set aside specifically for the advertising objectives that I have in mind, whether that be for top of funnel, for just growing your audience. Maybe you've got releases coming out and you're planning, fan finder campaigns around new singles. Plan to set aside your budget, plan to build those campaigns, plan to run them. Don't be skittish about what's going on, but do know that you're going into like hard mode in the ad space in Q4. Same goes for collecting opt-ins, same goes for sales for sure.
That's a really good point that I don't know that I've ever really thought about, which is, you said, plan your ad budget and how you're going to spend it, and then spend it, and don't just dip out because it's a little more expensive. Like, I definitely have been guilty of that in some degree, of being very quick to pivot and or pull budget. We spend a lot of time in ads manager, so it's a little different. But like before I was way more well versed in it, I definitely would just pull my budget if it wasn't going well and be like, well, I don't want to spend this $500 now because blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you have that planned, spend it. That's a really good point. I think that is is a potential downfall for a lot of artists is that they are just going to back out if it seems like it's getting too expensive. Now, one thing to say there is we're not just saying like turn on a campaign and spend the money and don't look at it.
I was just going to give that caveat.
Yeah. Like, so if you're running a free plus shipping and handling thing and you're seeing one CD sold for $100, like, okay, revisit it, make it better. Like, make sure you're trying to get the best results you can, but don't just not spend the money is my kind of thought there. But I guess, Jack, do you have anything you wanted to tack onto that?
Well, that's a good point. Like it often depends on your objective in advertising, right? I've seen over the years, a lot of people get to Q4 and they're talking about running fan finder campaigns, right? Top of funnel for new listener acquisition. And when their costs are up higher than what they were at the beginning of the year, they're like, oh, it sucks and I probably shouldn't advertise right now. That's not really the case. Like as long as you're still getting a meaningful result for your business, and in that case, it's getting new people aware of you, getting new fans into your world, having to pay a little bit more for that right now, welcome to the club, you know? That's just going to be a reality of where you're at. All the tweaking in the world may not fix that. Now, like you said, Ed, when we're talking about lead generation or sales, if you're just burning money and not getting any sales and you're not getting any meaningful result towards your objective, then yeah, you know, you might want to consider pulling that budget, or you might want to consider refactoring that campaign altogether or pivoting or doing something else. So yeah, I'm not giving a blanket license to stop caring about your advertising. If anything, I think you should care more. However, I am saying like, recognize that you're going to be playing with the peaks and valleys of ad inventory right now as people are just flooding the space. CPMs are going to skyrocket. In fact, we've been seeing them go up over this year. So this isn't going to be an unusual thing. It's just following trends. That's really all that it is. So just be aware of that and set your expectations accordingly.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think like if you're checking this out, you're listening to this episode, I think Jack kind of said this, you might be sitting there being like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind the 8 ball. But if you're listening to this in September or early October, like you're really not behind the 8 ball. You just got to get going. And so I kind of hope, and I'm sure Jack feels the same, like I hope that this episode is useful to everybody in the sense of like, look, if you haven't already started planning stuff, here's the things you need to do to get up and running, because the worst thing you can do is not use the holiday season as an opportunity to build your list and to build your relationships and to set yourself up for 2023. That's the worst thing. It's not bad if you don't have like a 10 out of 10 gold product in terms of an opt-in funnel to run. That's okay. You just don't want to do nothing. You know what I mean? I know that might sound weird or like, well, what if it's not exactly as I wanted? It's like, that's fine. This episode is literally to say, make a plan, get something up and running, start driving people to your list so you can talk to them, sell to them, and then start 2023 with a better foundation. And I think what's really important here to stress is no matter where you are in your career, small or big, like this is a really great opportunity to take a step up and again, set yourself up for a great end of the year, but also a great start of 2023 and viewing things incrementally as like, okay, say I don't have my number one ideal funnel ready to go, but I have this other one. Let me get this thing up and running. Let me get 100 subscribers, or let me get 500 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers. That's 100 or 500 or 1,000 more subscribers than you would have had at the start of 2023 if you didn't do it now. And so think about it that way. So I guess I'm saying not intended to stress anybody out, just intended to hopefully clarify, like make a plan, build some stuff out, start communicating, then advertise, stick to your budget. Like those are the check marks to kind of hit, and they can be hit very quickly.
Yeah, totally. That's such a good point. I think like to ease any concerns or fears about pulling any of this off is like the bar is so low for taking action at this period of time, in my opinion. Like that's why we're talking about like move fast here, take action, put some MVP processes and strategies and ideas into practice, and don't leave them kind of like just in your brain anymore. And that will get you set up for definitely more success than you would have had if you hadn't done them, and probably more success than a lot of your peers. So yeah, hopefully that's a helpful caveat in an episode where it may have felt like we were coming at you guys kind of fierce and, pushy.
Yeah. So treat this as like a, nice, encouraging, motivational podcast episode, not as a judgy, pushy one.
100%. Well, I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that this gets you guys charged up for an exciting Q4, because I'm definitely excited about it. There's so much to take advantage of here, and there's so much opportunity for artists that I think it's just a shame that so many people miss out on it. So hopefully you guys take some of these ideas from these big 3 steps, use that to, push your music forward in the next few months. There's so much opportunity. There's so much that you can do. There's so much creativity that you can apply into your marketing, and I think you absolutely should. So we'll be talking about a lot of this stuff over the next few months as we wind down 2022 and roll through Q4. But until then, we'll see you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, indies.
Can y'all really feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast, feel me? Say what?